In honor of this film's 10-year anniversary, I've decided to do a review of Disney Pixar's Up. Up is a movie from Pixar and it came out in 2009. The story follows an elderly man named Carl Fredricksen who's been dreaming of going to Paradise Falls in South America with his wife Ellie, who has sadly passed away. One day he decides to attach a bunch of balloons to his house. He makes a floating house and travels to Paradise Falls. On the way, a young wilderness explorer named Russell unexpectedly joins him on his journey. On their journey, they come across characters such as a talking dog named Doug, a colorful bird named Kevin. Speaking of the bird, his childhood idol, Charles Muntz, has been searching for that bird. Now, I remember seeing Up back in theaters in 2009, and I remember really enjoying this movie, and I continued to love this movie for years. And I've got to say, out of Pixar's entire filmography, this is my all-time favorite Pixar movie. I love the Toy Story movies, The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc., Inside Out. They have made so many great films, but Up is my personal favorite Pixar movie of all time. One of the best family films ever made, one of the best animated films of all time, and one of my favorite films of all time. I absolutely adore Up still to this day. This is a masterpiece. First, the animation after all these years continues to be so gorgeous and holds up very well today. The colors, the locations of Paradise Falls, the jungle, it all looks so amazing. Even some of the little things I like to notice, like the clouds, rocks, water, even some of the details on the hair on Carl Fredricksen. Just this animation is still fantastic 10 years later. And something I really admired about Up, as well as another Pixar film that came out in 2000s, this and Ratatouille had premises that are just so not judge a book by its cover. In Ratatouille, Pixar made a film about a rat who becomes a chef in Paris, France. Really? How are they gonna make that work? But they did. And in this film, they made a movie about a man who makes a floating house, and they made it work. It's amazing how well Pixar has executed these premises that are just so not judge a book by its cover. How can you talk about Up without mentioning the opening of this movie? It's pretty much perfection. Carl and Ellie's married life in the beginning of this movie is not only one of my favorite scenes in animation, it is also one of my favorite scenes ever. The music, the emotion, there's no dialogue, and just how much of a masterwork it is at visual storytelling. And it was such an amazing start to the movie. I absolutely love that sequence. And Michael Giacchino's amazing musical score in that scene. I like how it first starts off as happy, but then later, when it goes on, it becomes very sad. And I absolutely love the music in this movie, and also, it won an Oscar for Best Original Score. Very well deserved. And that piece of musical score, Married Life, it is one of my favorite musical scores ever in an animated movie. And in my opinion, Michael Giacchino's best work yet. And along with the great characters in this movie that I love, and even though Carl Fredricksen hasn't had the happiest life after his wife has passed away, he is very grumpy. But later in the film, he does grow as a character and starts to become a likable character. I also like that this was the first Pixar film to have an elderly man as the main character, and I don't think that's ever happened in a Pixar movie before this, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Now, as for Russell, and I liked Russell, although I can understand why some may find this character annoying, since he is a bit loud and he talks a lot throughout this entire movie. But I do like Russell. He's optimistic and determined, and I like how they didn't just make him the comic relief who's just there for the journey. They did develop him in this one scene that I really liked between him and Carl Fredricksen. There's a scene where Russell is trying to build a tent, and then he later talks to Carl Fredricksen about how his father doesn't really spend a lot of time with him, and I actually liked how they developed Russell a bit more, not just make him the comic relief who just talks a lot. I liked how they gave him a bit more development, and I also really liked the talking dog, Doug, and I like how he talks with the collar, not like words out of his mouth, and just with the collar that makes him talk. And I really like Squirrel. Anyways, I really liked Doug in this movie, and I thought he was a funny and entertaining character in this movie. And I also really liked the design for Kevin in this movie. Very colorful, really like the feathers. And as for the villain in this movie, Charles Monson, I gotta say, he is one of my favorite Pixar villains. Do understand why he wants the bird, since back in the day he was exposed as fraud, and he's been claiming to bring back the bird, dead or alive. And I also liked how straightforward he was and also ruthless he is at trying to find this bird. And I really like this villain, and he is one of my favorite Pixar villains, up there with Syndrome from The Incredibles and Lotso in Toy Story 3. I thought he was a pretty good villain. And this is definitely one of Pixar's most emotional films, if not their most emotional. I already mentioned the opening of this movie, Carl and Ellie's life throughout marriage, and how beautiful that sequence is, but there's also one scene that just gets me every time. And that is a scene where Carl Fredricksen's house finally at Paradise Falls near the waterfall, and the scene where he goes inside his house and it's pretty much a mess, and looks through Ellie's adventure book and also a note from Ellie. Just, I love that scene. Just, that scene makes me cry. Just, oh, the emotion of it, the pacing of the scene, no dialogue, and it's just so emotional and powerful. This movie gave me the feels. And I've said this before in my review of Coco, no matter in the beginning like in this movie, or at the end like Toy Story 3 or Inside Out or Coco, Pixar will find a way to make you cry. And as for issues, nope, don't have one single problem with Up. Overall, Up is my all-time favorite Pixar movie, and it is a masterpiece. It's a great adventure, it's funny, it has memorable characters, the animation is gorgeous, the fantastic musical score, and the powerful emotion. I absolutely adored Up, beginning, middle, and end. This is my favorite film of 2009, and I couldn't be any more happier that this got a Best Picture nomination. And this was the year after the Academy has received a ton of backlash after not nominating The Dark Knight for Best Picture, which I'm still furious about. And this was back when the Academy used to nominate 5 movies for Best Picture, and which led them to nominate more than 5 movies, up to 10, for Best Picture. And I'm really glad that this was one of the films that was nominated for Best Picture back in 2010, with other movies like District 9, Inglourious Bastards, and the movie that won, The Hurt Locker. Now that I think about it, I think 2009 was a great year for movies, and this was my favorite film of 2009. And overall, without a doubt, I am going to give Up, bam, 5 out of 5 stars. Still a phenomenal movie to this day. My all-time favorite Pixar movie. I absolutely adore it. If you haven't seen this film in a while, definitely give it a rewatch. It is such a fantastic movie. I love this movie so much. Up is a masterpiece. And I still can't believe this movie is 10 years old. And I definitely think 10 years later in the future, this film will still be seen as a classic in cinema. So what do you guys think of Up? Do you agree? Disagree with me? Let me know below. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe if you're new here. It really means a lot. I'm Jack Benner, and look forward to another movie review.